Thank you. Let me take a sip of this real quick. Good time for a pee break for those guys. I'm telling you, it's true. It would be way, way funnier if the name was pronounced Yankher, because then I wouldn't take away the headline of everybody saying, like, yanking my chain and all that stuff. But it's actually Yahnker. I hate to take that away from you, but it is Eric Yahnker. You can pronounce my first name any way you want, but Mom would hate it if you mispronounced the last name. Actually, that happened to me one time. That happened to me one time on a very large scale. I'll tell you later. Here. Let's just say, you know how every once in a while you got to figure out what the hell it is you do, mostly because someone asks, and so I spent a few hours this week getting to know myself a little bit for you guys. And this is an image of the opening I have up right now in London. I don't know if you're familiar with Paradise Row Gallery. Yeah. They're pretty good, huh? Good, I'm glad to know that. Yeah, popular place. Let me give you the address. It's 74 Newman, since you haven't heard of the place. But anyways, go check that out. A shameless plug for my show that's up through the 28th of this month. It is true that one of my key focuses is certainly American politics, Americana at large, but I'm also just a general jackass and smarty pants and, you know, all that good stuff that comes along with the territory. But I found this ability to draw, and that's sort of what got me in a lot of doors. I remember when I actually was president of my high school, I beat my former best friend, and this girl who was like his campaign manager came up to me afterwards, and she was like, you know what? The only reason you won is because you can draw and you're funny. And I thought, well, I guess I should go with that then if it won me the presidency. I don't know what else to do. But actually, graduating high school, I don't want to make myself out to be like a complete Cro-Magnon. In fact, Cro-Magnon probably had more culture than I did coming out of high school. Never did I step foot in a gallery or art museum. I knew nothing of this sort of thing. I mean, unless you had like a TV theme song contest that I could win. But as far as what was going on in art, I had no idea. But that's what makes me. So this show is called Sticks and Drones. It is a commentary. Basically, the show is about the buying and selling of the idea of American exceptionalism to the greater world at large, as well as to ourselves as Americans, so that we can keep our chin up while we try to indoctrinate others. Ultimately, I was a writer first in comedy and eventually made my way very strangely to the art world, and I'll kind of go through that with you. But really, here's another image from my show. I don't know if you guys can understand. When I'm thinking about myself here, I start to think about how I conceive ideas, and I can't tell you, maybe I can try. The triangulation, you know, between the brain, the heart, and the loins is really where everything comes from. There's something going on when actually it's probably more of a linear line, because I've often said my heart is probably just an extra set of testicles waiting to drop. So keep that in mind. When you look at images like this, this is a piece I call Speed Bumps from my show. Now, granted, I work in colored pencil, so this is a 8-foot-tall drawing, all done in colored pencils. And granted, it may seem a pretty harsh image, but let me tell you a little bit about what the mind and the heart loins are thinking about. So I have let's see. Yep, there's the mind. The mind says about this, the mind says, well, this is an image about American complacency and an ignorance is bliss mentality about our own impending decline. You may not be aware, but America's flagship beer, Budweiser, is no longer owned by an American company. In 2008, Budweiser parent company Anheuser-Busch was sold to Belgian-Brazilian beverage giant InBev. Many analysts thought the results of this slap-in-the-face outsourcing of America's favorite beer would be a disaster. But what they discovered is that as long as they continued to brand Bud with classic American patriotic themes and never raise the price on our suds, Americans would continue to guzzle Bud long into the future. Additionally, the Italian sports car, this cherry red Ferrari, was used to slyly caution or reminisce to the days of the Roman Empire and our own parallels to the symptoms which brought its decline. Okay, well, and then the loins, let's see what they say. Wear some tight pants today to accentuate. It's saying, hell yeah! That's the voice of my loins, I don't know. Maybe it's more like Bikini Babes, beer, Ferrari. Wait a minute. Whoa, not cool, bro. Looks like those babes are being run over. But hell yeah, Bikini Babes and beer. So you can see, I've always said there's a shallow end and a deep end to the work, and honestly, I am just as happy splashing around ankle deep in the piss-soaked kiddie pool as I am going where my feet can't touch the bottom. And if you're willing to come with me, put a pair of floaties on and go to the deep end, we'll go there together. But you're not necessarily needed to read a history book to get into my work either. And I don't want to hammer you over the head with concept. Ultimately, the concept for me, although it oftentimes comes from this place of political thought and probably bringing down to size my own culture, it's just, I don't know, it's one of those things where I'm just, I gotta be what I am. I gotta tell the truth. I gotta be authentic. And so here's a size comparison. So in authenticity, I want to show you, of course, that this is not the size of a postage stamp, and it's not the size of a girl either. It's bigger than that. So here's another piece. Space Jam is what I call this one. And so, again, let's go to what the mind is discussing. The mind says, this image here uses Michael Jordan in his youthful, athletic prime as a stand-in for how Americans, especially older Americans, view themselves. Virtuosic, multicultural, innovative, influential, unrivaled, emphatically dunking or inseminating its ideas on politics, culture, and virtue unilaterally to an often resistant globe. I've utilized Courbet's Origin of the World to explore the idea of birth in the sense of nation building. Of course, just as Jordan can only truthfully defy gravity in a photograph or drawing, so too does Courbet's famous work forever preserve its anonymous model's biological and sexual freshness. In other words, its ability to be inseminated is as mythical as Jordan's perceived hang time, as is America's ability to cleanly indoctrinate our exceptionalist brand. And then, of course, the loins say, holy shit, that's Michael Jordan dunking on a big hairy vagina. So either way, you're welcome to take it either way, and I'm perfectly happy with the results. So let me step back to where I came from, because oftentimes people go, oh, I get it, you worked at South Park, so I get it. Well, you know, South Park, I was born before South Park. I did kind of I watch enough television to understand pop culture, and the light bulb eventually turned on for politics, but after some partying days. But South Park was one of those things. I'll tell you how I got to. Ultimately, I was born in a little beach enclave in Los Angeles called Torrance. Has a oil refinery on one side, a beach on the other. Depending on the weather, you can't tell which is which. And in between, one of its claims to fame was a huge mall that for a brief time in the 1970s was the largest indoor mall in America. So that tells you a little bit about where I come from. And as I mentioned, I didn't know anything about art and culture coming out. I mean, the most that I drew in high school was basically just drawing in the margins of my homework, like my teachers in compromising positions. Doing yoga on themselves, that kind of thing. So I was tailor-made for certain kinds of things, but ultimately what happened, I went to USC for journalism, University of Southern California, and while there, great. Writing was all I wanted to do, so that was all well and good, but little did I know that you also had all these state-required courses that you had to take in math and science, man. I don't know what's going on with that, but had to get rid of some of those things. And I also had to party a lot. I was a frat boy. I did the whole thing the right way. It was good, naked, fun time for a while. But I was also paying for school myself. My parents were smart enough to know that if I'm going to be spending that kind of dough, I should be responsible for how I spend my time. So in a couple of years' time, had no money, and I couldn't afford another year unless I went to work full-time. I'd worked pretty much all of my life, starting at 15, so it wasn't a big deal. I took a year off, went to a community college to get rid of general education, state-required courses in math and science for about 30 grand less a year. While I was there on a whim, I took a life drawing class, and while I was in that class, the teacher, the first person to ever say and point at me like, hey, you should probably be doing that for a living. Drawing is your thing. Pointed me towards CalArts character animation. I guess like 6 or 7 kids in the class. Perennially, we're always trying to get into this Harvard of animation programs. And he said, like Mick to Rocky, he's like, you got the stuff, kid. You can do this. I was like, hey, man, that's cool. No one ever told me that before. Figured I needed a life change. I applied to CalArts, got in. Okay, so now I'm in this place where basically everyone has wanted to be an animator from the time they could breathe. And here I am. This is my first introduction to any form of art, is this commercial medium animation, which I'm growing a passion for at the time, but I certainly didn't have the same. But in a way, that's this beautiful thing. You're coming into this experience just newly formed. You can develop anything you want, and you've also not made any mistakes up until that point. You can learn from people who are the best of the best, which, like I said, when I walked into that school, I had no idea I was walking into the Harvard of animation schools. But what ended up happening was, again, after 1 year there, it's still an expensive school, I needed to get to work somewhere so I could afford to keep going. I saw some job posting that basically said prerequisite for storyboarding, and also at the end of needing certain drawing expertise was the ability to tomahawk dunk. I don't know if you guys know what tomahawk dunking is, but it's like, so imagine you're trying to kill somebody with a tomahawk, but you have a basketball in your hand, you're attacking the rim. So I thought, hey, there's a reason that there's no term artist-athlete. I actually have played ball in my life. Maybe I can apply for this job and see what it is. As it turns out, it was South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. The film was needing an extra storyboard artist, but they also needed someone to fill out their basketball league. So basically, I walked in there with my portfolio, like, yeah, great, good, whatever. So you play ball? And I was like, look, I can't tomahawk dunk, let's be honest, maybe a tennis ball or like a volleyball once in a while, but I can always grab rim. And they're like, great, you're hired, here's a contract and a jersey. And so basically, working on this show was one of the greatest things I could ever do for learning, better than school. I ultimately ended up going back to school, finishing there, and then I went on into doing freelance work, doing a lot of commercials. Basically, the idea was I wanted to draw, and the industry was shifting into CGI. And I'm just a purist. I like this pencil on paper. Give me the sharp end of a stick. That's what I want to use for my lifetime. So I ended up making things like Public Schoolhouse Rock, and It's the Big-Ass Pumpkin, Chucky Brown for Mad TV. And then the biggie came from Seinfeld, where I ended up doing this thing called Signimation that I created for them, and they ended up using on as a bonus feature on all their DVDs. And I ended up getting Seinfeld money for doing this. It was like the easiest job I ever had, and it just was one of those things where it fell in my lap, and I added a zero to the budget, and they were like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. It's like, great. So when that happens, you parlay, as they say. I don't know where they say that, but they say it somewhere. I guess I do. So that's ultimately what I did. But really, this job was the reason I wanted to quit doing commercials. I was doing this "We See Your Potential" thing for Microsoft, of course, all made on Apple computers. And this thing I spent about like 2 years working on, and I remember this pivotal moment. It was like I was 4 o'clock in the morning. I looked down, and I'm just drawing once again this stupid scene where, like, I don't know, some kid on like a big wheel turns into like a race car and he's driving around a track, I don't know, something really dumb. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm here all by myself putting in this kind of hours for changing the rims on this thing because some guy at an agency thought that the rims looked a little wonky. So I said, hey, wait a minute, what if I put in this much time to myself as I've been putting in for these guys? So ultimately, the thing that has created, this is some of my other exhibitions, but the thing that has created the guy who does these kinds of things ultimately started here, literally about 10 years ago, August 2004. I quit everything after the Seinfeld job came in, and I finished that, which was about 6 weeks of work for which ended up, the money from that ended up lasting me about 4 years. But I started pulling apart this Gap shirt, just pulling it apart, thread by thread, leaving only the pinstripe. I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do as an artist. I was like, I don't know what you do. I'm just going to do this and hope something comes. I was used to labor, so I figured animation's a lot of work. You know, I'll just do some work, and then, you know, maybe people will take me seriously just because I put a lot of time into doing stuff. Ultimately, it took me 2.5 months to finish this first job for myself. And, you know, working like 11-hour days, everybody in my life started hating me because I evacuated to my bat cave, and I did another thing after that. I started cutting apart Moby Dick by letter and by punctuation and by numbers and alphabetizing them, separating them. So each one of these is like a mound of A's, B's, C's, and all the way down. Anyway, it's about 1 million letters. Totally sucked. But I was still trying to figure out what I want to be an artist. I don't know. This whole other thing wasn't feeling right. Everybody looks like they're having much more fun elsewhere. So this is another project I did where I took an old version of the King James Bible and I whited it out except for that which sequentially spells Bee Gees over and over again. So it's Bejesus. Again, just getting high on whiteout for 2.5 months. It wasn't that too, you know, it was all right, I guess. In this case, a piece called Erasing Time, I literally erased Time magazine until it was like erasing toilet paper. Again, that sucked. This one, I wrote Stephen R. Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People with my foot. I still have hip flexor issues on rainy days from that idiotic thing. Anyways, some of that is like reactionary in a way because you're like going, I don't know, people are gonna take me seriously if I do this stuff. Ultimately, I had to get back to being me, which was just being a smarty pants and general jackass who also has a certain amount of skill, fortunately for drawing. So these are 10 things Eric Yahnker thinks he knows that may or may not help you, featuring some of the drawings that I've done in the past, which I won't go into explaining, but just know, I mean, if you want to believe that it's the ideas behind them are as smart as I say they are as I go through this. Number one, don't live with your parents. I don't know. I know too many guys in their mid-30s who I've tried to help uplift them. They're talented people, but unfortunately, they just, you can give them all the keys, and maybe they'll do every last step, but if they don't move out, not only will they never get laid, they will also never, ever manage to get into the art world at large. So Don't live with your parents, and also, if you are a parent of a 34-year-old or whatever that's like languishing in your basement playing video games or whatever, please know you're not helping them, and they're probably just waiting for you to die so they can have all your shit. Number two, go to school because you want to. Ultimately, I went to school for character animation. I did not go to school for art. I tried to get into school for art. I actually did at one point apply to a bunch of schools. Everybody rejected me, so I don't know what that was all about, but I choose to think it was because they thought I was ready. And they were like, hey, you were applying to teach here? Is that it? So go to school because you want to. What I'm saying is you can learn to do whatever it is you want to do outside of school. I didn't know how to be an artist. I started pulling apart a damn shirt. Nobody noticed that one, okay? But it got me to the point where I figured out over time, like it's that idea, if I start tickling the ivories now, maybe by Hanukkah I can be playing some tunes for my family, but if I start in early December, I probably won't get the chance to do anything but Mary Had a Little Lamb or something, right? So start now. Doesn't matter if you can get into the school of your dreams or not, especially with the internet these days, you guys. I mean, my God, the possibilities are endless for you to be seen by somebody. That's how it happened for me. I just put it out there, got a critical mass for myself, and then people started sniffing around. Number three, have a trademark look. I'm embarrassed to say this one, but it's so true, and the reason I know this a little bit is because I had a big, bushy, gross beard for like a decade. It was one of those things that I started to grow around the same time I was pulling apart that shirt. Maybe I didn't notice what was happening to me. Others did notice, but actually, I had a girlfriend who basically said all she wanted for Hanukkah was a beard. I just kept it for a really long time after that. But really, I shaved it, and then I've been having to like reintroduce myself to people for the last few months, including my own family. Nobody knows who the hell I am anymore. So I've discovered, have yourself a trademark look, but seriously, don't be a douchebag about it. Like, don't be the guy with like the schwanz hanging out of your pants or something. Like, nobody wants to see that. Be the guy who's like, oh, he's always wearing, that denim jacket with the buttons on it or something. I don't know, but just something so that if you're a shy guy, people will remember you when you walk in a room. 4, always tell the truth, creatively speaking, of course. Like, don't like tell your mom, like, she looks like a real fat ass today and her chins are looking great. What I'm telling you is that, like, if you're kind of a jerk, be a jerk in your work. I mean, if ultimately the truth is going to come out. I just believe that like every piece of art any one of us does is self-portraiture. And if you're lying to yourself, that's going to be shown through as well. So if you're always telling the truth, creatively speaking, you can also know where your gag reflex is when somebody says, hey, I would like you to do this project. You don't automatically just jump into it. You say, what am I willing to do? Do I really want to take the, whatever account it is that is morally bankrupting you? Or will you stick to your guns? As long as you're not living with your parents, you can say no to these things. So otherwise, if it's a matter of you living with your parents or not, take the job, no matter what moral bankruptcy it causes. Number 5, do not be afraid to self-promote. Yes, don't be afraid to self-promote. These are all huge drawings, just so you know. Don't be afraid to self-promote, because having worked in journalism, having been in the press, I understand that basically as nauseating as it is to press send on that self-promotion or post or whatever it is that you're going to end up doing, and trust me, every time I'm going, I hate doing this, but I do, it works because these people need content. And if you've got something really interesting to provide them, they're so happy to receive it, because every day they've got to have a readership and an audience, and they need someone like you to give them something to look at. So don't be afraid to self-promote, and just show the places that you go to read or whatever online, to show them what you're up to and see if maybe they want to write about you. Also, don't be afraid of criticism. Believe it or not, I mean, I hadn't received for years. I started showing in 2008. I hadn't received ever a negative review. They'd all been like gloriously positive. It just showed me I wasn't doing my job very well. Quite frankly, I was hoping that this time around, and you guys really pulled through, because one of your cheeky British guys really laid into me in timeout, which was awesome, because now I can use that. I can parlay, as they say. What it does is it galvanizes your fans when something like that happens, and then everyone like attacks the journalist for you on your behalf, and you're like, oh shucks guys, that's really cool, you know, all this time. And then you could show all the glowing reviews you got in the past and say, am I different today than I was yesterday? And then beyond that, you can say to yourself, wow, I'm big enough to receive negative reviews, because who's gonna punch that far down, you know? So it's a rite of passage, if you will. Number 7, please know that procrastination is absolutely necessary. I mean, surfing the web or whatever it is you do, watching those sitcoms, I mean, for God's sakes, whatever it is you do, I know personally as an artist that there's not a single thing I can do. It's a 24-hour job. I can't sit down and watch a movie without thinking to myself, how can I use this in what I do? It's a natural reaction. I think most people think of artists as people who, you know, they just fill in coloring books 24 hours a day or whatever. You know, it's just like funny times, man. I don't know, but like seriously, I'm more stressed out than anybody I know working at a bank or in an insurance office or whatever, and I know this because my dad was an insurance man, and God damn, he hated his life. I'm saying I'm happy to make this work, but for God's sakes, know that I'm punishing myself for it every day for you guys. Number 8, work shitty jobs for a while. So when you begin to hate art, which is inevitable, you'll also realize you hate working shitty jobs that much more. That definitely occurred for me. And it continues. I go like, oh man, there's some real unsavory characters in this business. Some people probably think that about me. But I know that I've been around much more unsavory, so it's still better. Number 9, please, please, please save the FU money if humanly possible. Again, barring you living at home with your parents, but because saying no is the biggest skill that you can possibly have. And I'm not just talking about compromising situations in a dark alley. I'm saying to jobs that you do not want to morally take, or to shows you don't want to do, or to being patient to wait for the next thing to come around, which you know will be a better opportunity. If you have that money saved and you're not just buying another dumb pair of shoes or whatever it may be, just keep it to survival, because survival is about saying no to the things you do not want to do. It's like the most important thing in my life. Number 10, don't live with your parents. I can't stress that enough. Please, shall I remind you again? I've just seen too many people go down with this affliction. I left home at 17 and never looked back. It's not because my parents were bad people, it's because I really wanted to do some bad shit and not get shit for it. So I'll just give you a little bit about my process. Like here, sometimes it's about law of attraction, and like sometimes I just crave, like a woodchuck must chuck wood, like a draftsman must draft, and like I see a painting like this, this Rubens painting, and I say, oh my God, I just really want to draw that painting. I don't know what it is, like I didn't get to go through my apprenticeship or something, but I want to draw it. So in this way, now I've got to find a really great excuse to draw it, because I can't just draw it straight up. I've got to, I don't know, so you figure, well, I could take the story of Daniel in the lion's den, you know, basically this guy won't pray to the king, he'll pray to his own God instead, gets thrown in the lion's den. I'd be praying to the king, don't get me wrong, it's all good with me, it's only 30 days, don't throw me in the damn den. But this guy ends up not dying, and then the king gets torn apart. So anyways, there's that idea that you can go with, but but then maybe there's a way to intervene. Like, I don't know, maybe you put young Keanu Reeves in the lion's den, or maybe it's a young Britney. Maybe it's John and Yoko. I don't know. I mean, everything creates different meanings. Maybe you put Kim Ye in there. Potentially young royals. Well, I tell you, you just never know. I've got this incredible stock of images that this is kind of like the process of what I go through. I take the grand puzzle of life and I put it together in my own way. I mean, ultimately, our limitations becomes our style, and my limitations are sort of, if you can draw anything, your limitations are tough because it actually opens up too much for you. So you have to self-limit yourself, and by doing that, I try to give myself a prompt in a way. It's not quite the same as like being an illustrator, I guess, but political cartooning is ultimately my one job in life that I couldn't have because of sort of the death of print journalism. It's gone to history. It's sort of like there was this idea of delivering information to the illiterate masses, and now it's delivering information to sort of the distracted masses. So really, I get to be this glorified political cartoonist who, there's this grand safety net called art, in quotes, where if you can't categorize or identify completely what it is you do, I suggest you call it art and tell galleries about it and see if they'll put it up on their walls and sell it for big money. Worked for me. I mean, what the hell? Why not put Mrs. Doubtfire in there, or young Rod Stewart? I mean, it all changes everything. I mean, Slash would do it. Maybe Forrest Gump, or would it be better if Forrest Gump had no pants? Or maybe Jay-Z and Beyonce, or maybe Jay-Z has no pants, or maybe this nice young couple in the lion's den, or a giant pair of feet. I mean, there's so many things you can do. Spider-Man, or maybe Sebastian from the Ice Capades version of The Little Mermaid. I mean, you name it, you could do anything. The point is, I didn't have to go to school for this stuff, and I just get to be authentically me. And it's this beautiful thing that basically I get to create these pieces like this, which is this huge 8.5-foot drawing based on a Jacob Jordaens painting, and I get to do my own personal favorite kind of things where literally all I wanted to do was draw this baseball glove. I had a thirst for it. I just needed to. I told you, I got to draft stuff. I looked at this baseball glove. I got to draw that thing. I need to get this out of me. And so I had to find an excuse to use it. So all I did was take apart the little section in the middle of the baseball glove to just kind of give him the Vulcan salute. And here's another thing where this is Juanita Horsetits here, and I just really wanted to draw those horses. I just really, really wanted to draw those horses. So sometimes, chicken or the egg, you have to find your excuses to do certain things, and I find conceptual reasons to do what I need to do. But anyways, I encourage you, please go to the show that's up through June 28th at Paradise Row. 74 Newman here in London. And thank you very much.